time in this country, a long time ago, when reading wasn't just for fags, and neither was writing. People wrote books and movies that had stories, so you cared whose ass it was and why it was farting, and I believe that time can come again.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Think Liberty podcast. I'm Vinny Marshall. This is episode 7. In this episode, we don't have a special topic, but we do have a guest. We've got Caitlin Cloven as normal, and our special guest tonight is Eric July, lead singer of Backwordz and the Multimedia Department director for Being Libertarian. How you doing tonight, Eric?
I'm doing great, brother. How you doing?
I'm doing awesome. Thanks for coming on our show. Really appreciate your time.
Absolutely, and thanks for having me.
Yeah. So we're just going to jump right into it. I know this is probably a question you've answered a bunch of times, but for anyone that's listening to this that hasn't heard it, let's just start with the basic one. How exactly did you first get interested in the libertarian movement, and what got you interested in libertarianism? Overall, what kind of got you following this scent?
For sure. Well, it started, I was in college. I was still a staunch leftist. I had did my bit of campaigning, and obviously pushing for Obama's, presidency back in 2007, 2008. And I got to second guessing a lot of things. And what really, I guess, sort of took place and what was a turning point for me in my life was taking, I guess, an economics class and in college, and it wasn't more so what I learned from the class itself. It was more so, or what the professor was teaching. It was just, all right, well, this concept of economics actually, exists. And I was like, what about, and I was still kind of stuck in my box and my pro-black box. I wanted to know about black economists, and thank God, I came across guys like Thomas Sowell and Walter E. Williams, and who I finally met this past weekend. And I got to tell him that. It was reading up on your work and seeing your speakings for things you guys have been doing for the last decade really influenced me, and more so maybe Thomas Sowell earlier on, definitely, and reading most of his, some of his work. And watch some of his old videos and stuff like that when he would be side by side with like Milton Friedman and talking about welfarism and talking about the minimum wage and talking about all these concept of disparities and stuff like that. And he was saying this decades ago, and I was like, man, this is a really, really, really interesting, concept. And I remember reading Basic Economics, and it's like. By the first page, you're like, wow, everything that I had previously thought, was already a lie. This idea of benevolent government is a pipe dream. They have been the guys that have been responsible for a lot of suffering for a lot of different demographics, such as black people, but in a different way than what I maybe, thought about. Previously, because everybody knows about talk about police brutality and stuff all the time, but what about the minimum wage and how that that racist background and how it's historically priced. Milton Friedman called it the most anti-Negro law in the book, and how it's pricing black people out of the market. So reading up on those guys and again seeing them speak, it really just changed my life, and it was almost an immediate turn. It was an immediate turn because more so Thomas Sowell, because I was more, and that's why if you notice in my what I advocate, I always focus on the culture, because hearing guys like Thomas Sowell speak about, basically he turns a mirror on you. You look at black communities and black culture and some of the things that we do to ourselves, or black people do to themselves, and how they can help their own situation by simply advocating for policies aside from what's been constantly, I guess, the narratives that have been perpetuated in their community, and it's left this kind of monopoly, political monopoly on these communities. So it just opened my mind, and I got to thinking about obviously what I could do, because I used to gangbang and stuff like that, what I could do to try to help I guess advance my life and the people around me and their lives and the communities around me. And I got to be becoming a staunch person I was against, I guess, was staunchly, against, violence, and because looking at the homicide rates, lost a lot of homies along the way to just senseless violence, people being caught in a crossfire and stuff like that. And it was just one thing led to another, and I started kind of in that sector, I guess, of Chicagoism, the Thomas Sowells of the world. And from an I don't really like to call Thomas Sowell a Chicagoan, but, I guess you can, if you have to put him in one box, you put him over there. But then obviously that led me into the Rothbards of the world, the Austrian economics, and, in reading Anatomy of State, that'll do it for anybody, I would think, and turn them into an ANCAP immediately. It doesn't take long. It doesn't take long at all. So, but for sure, Thomas Sowell and Walter Williams have to be the guys that I credit, at least their work credits, for me to just starting to want to think about things a little more critically than what I have previously.
Yeah, and so I want to stay on this for a moment, because I just recently actually got into Sowell. And I read Economic Facts and Fallacies, and it kind of blew my mind apart, only because I'm reading it, and I've ingested a bunch of libertarian literature aside from that. And even as someone who's read Rothbard and all the Mises Institute greats, I jumped into this, and it's still like I had to step back, because he talks about stuff in such a way that just cuts everything away. He doesn't care. And like you were saying, right, he's bringing up this demographics and stuff, and I had to do a double take, because I was like, whoa, what kind of author am I reading? And then the more you listen and the more you get engaged in his work, you're like, oh wow, he's really putting it down here. And it was just a little more than I was anticipating. But I directly afterward went and got like the Vision of the Anointed, right, and I couldn't have enough of his work. Do you find that those are tough conversations to initiate with people? I feel like it's subject matter that's hard for people to hear sometimes.
I mean, it absolutely is. Definitely demographics, people, and I hate that libertarians kind of fall into this. A lot of libertarians fall into this idea of thinking that they don't exist. Like, demographics are an actual thing. You know what I mean? And they need to be explored. They absolutely need to be explored. And it is a hard conversation. It's not an easy conversation. Definitely when you take a guy like me, a person that's grew up in these oh man, I just hate to call it such a usual scenario, single parent household, didn't have a whole lot of money, ran to a life of being a knucklehead, banging and stuff like that to try to find some sense of placement. And how do you tell or at least initiate a conversation and say, all right, well, all of this crap that, we've been preaching or you've been hearing for pretty much all of your life, this political monopoly that's really this narrative that's on these communities, you tell them, all right, well, let's start by saying that that's all a bunch of horse crap. How do you start that conversation? It's a difficult conversation. It's one that needs to happen, but it's absolutely a hard. It's not an easy conversation to have, because it's a hard pill for a lot of people to swallow. I mean, that's why I guess I personally love Thomas Sowell and his work, because he gave it to you straight. Like, all of this other crap is bull. Like, this is all a bunch of nonsense. This is really what's going on. He a lot of what he dove into, it wasn't just with race. He talked about this whole concept of gender inequality and stuff like that. He would dive into that as well. And again, you hear these narratives that are definitely, if you grew up in the communities that I did, all you really hear is one side of thinking, and it's like, all right, the people that are on the left are the good guys on the right are the bad guys, and that's all you really know. So you take everything as if the left says it's got to be true, even no matter how insane that it says, it's got to be true. But it's hard. It's a hard conversation to initiate. I do find it difficult still to this day. It's became a lot easier, and of course it's a lot easier for me to maybe talk to a lot of these demographics, because I used to be there, and I grew up in a lot of these situations, at least more specifically talking to black people in their communities and what they grew up in. But it's a tough one. It's a tough one to have. But I think personally, where you start, as generic as it might sound, is that there are members that have been, I guess, grew up in those said demographics that end up finding the light, so to speak. And I think that's who we need to be behind, because For example, Caitlin may be able to, again, a generic, it might even be sexist is what I'm saying. I really don't care. But she might be able to get through to maybe a woman, and definitely a lot easier than what I can. And I might be able to get to a black person in the communities than what you guys can. So it's one of those things. And I don't want libertarians to run from those demographics, because they absolutely exist. And there's people that are involved in it. It doesn't matter what the demographic or what the subculture is. I say use it to advance liberty. It doesn't matter what it is. This is why I use music. This is why I try to use the fact that I grew up in these situations, I guess, to my advantage, because that is a thing that you can use to your advantage. And because people are stuck in their box, it's going to make a lot more sense coming from you than it may come from me.
Yeah, and that's so important though, because so what you're talking about with the leftist indoctrination in culture and in education, it almost makes it impossible to have these conversations in earnest, because there's so much emotion tied to the conversations that if you don't have that foundational stepping stone to be able to relate with who you're speaking to, you're looking at a whole different kind of conversation than you intended on having. One where you're being insulted, strawmanned. They're coming at you, and they're coming at you hot.
Absolutely.
They're pissed. I've had a bunch of these conversations just about economic topics, right? I can only imagine what it's like trying to barrel down a discussion about culture or neighborhoods and how they're affected by these programs. It'll be challenging.
You make a really good point, though, about, certain libertarians kind of shy away from demographics and just pretend they don't exist because, in the name of equality or the individual. It's like, even though we're an individualist party, there's still demographics. And I think we shouldn't be shying away from them, like you said. I think, and by the way, that was not sexist at all. I do get through to women much easier than a man would. For women's issues, and especially on the left where, people think that there's women's issues and there's these issues. And while they're there, they're usually wrong on the causes and the solutions. So I do think it's important for, women to reach out to women and people of color to reach out to people of color. And you know what I mean? Find something you can relate to. Absolutely. So you can get through to them better and they will listen to you. So it's not, some 60-year-old white guy going, to a women's meeting and telling them about libertarianism. So it's just not going to work out.
No, 100% true.
Yeah, I mean, you could try it all day. Yeah, it's just not going to be as effective because your audience isn't going to listen. So we're talking about the band, right? You're in Backwordz. When you got in your band, you guys kind of all agreed that okay, we're gonna deliver this message this way, no bullshit. We're not gonna filter anything. So
yeah, for sure.
My question is, I was in bands before, and I feel like it was just a pain in the ass just to get people into the same genre as I wanted to be in. So how challenging was it for you, and if you guys are politically aligned, to get a band full of people that were politically aligned? And if you're not politically aligned, how did you guys come to the agreement that you were just going to kind of lay it out like you did?
Right. Well, I've made the mistake in the past of being in a band that we weren't on the same page as far as politics. And I had to find it the hard way of me putting out a song and then it rubbing people the wrong way in the band, people that have close fans of the band locally and stuff like that. Ended up leaving that band, but with Backwordz, it was kind of one of those things that initially happened. We already knew what time it was. We knew what direction we were going to go in. And I would say that the guys the musicians, aside from Alex, the other vocalists, they were more like kind of non-political, and they just became political, more so because of me. So they're libertarians now, or more, let's say, more vocal about it. And so it works out, and I wouldn't advise anybody. I really don't know how people do it. I know there's other people in bands that have, I know how they do it. It's one thing to just have different political leanings, and you kind of doing a run-of-the-mill band where, you put out a song, same old kind of stuff. It's not political at all. But, I wouldn't think that it'd be possible for you to have a kind of political backing with your music or with your lyrics and you not being on somewhat the same page with the people that, because it's a really specific thing, right? It's a really specific subject matter. So you get to look in, not even just, turmoil maybe within the group, but how do you look like to the fans if maybe you saying one thing or I'm saying something and maybe and that's not to say that they're supposed to agree with everything that I say in a lyric, but I mean, if they just wholeheartedly disagree, it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. So it's tough, to get people that definitely in punk and hardcore and metal. Metal is more so, it's a little less than punk, in hardcore. Punk and hardcore for sure. It's just
rough.
Golly. Yeah. I mean, it's bad. So I don't know how anybody would do it and not be full leftist, because most of them are full leftists. So it's certainly a problem. But thankfully, I came across these guys and the stars aligned. And, we worked the magic almost immediately. Our first song was Grindstone, and it wasn't as political as some of the songs that we had dropped now, definitely in the recent album Veracity, but it had those political leanings. I was more about the social issues and kind of more of the pull yourself by the bootstraps kind of idea was the idea that we were projecting in that song. But I mean, it one thing led to another, and then we dropped that song Utopias Don't Exist, and that was me just going, all right, we already got a little following. Now we got to hit them in the mouth. And it worked out. It certainly worked out. We rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. Still rub a lot of people the wrong ways. Always mumblings and people, them Backwordz boys, and they saying this, they saying that, within people within our scene. But, it is what it is. I've always, I have an open forum, man. You want to come challenge me? My views, man, I put them to yours any day of the week. So but to have the opportunity to just be able to get this message out to people that otherwise wouldn't hear it is ultimately why we do it.
No, it's huge, man. And I mean, I think it's really cool because with music, you could reach a lot of people a different way, and you reach a different kind of people, you're reaching, the cool thing about music is you're reaching people when they want to learn, they want to take stuff in. And if they like your music, it kind of opens their mind up like you wouldn't get otherwise. You don't really have to argue with them. You just got to put it out. Yeah. And they're receptive because music just does that, right?
It's like a chemical, man. Like you can put something behind a beat. Like in a rap, I always use that as the example. You can listen to some of the things that some rappers say, man, it's kind of messed up. But they put it behind a beat, and then everybody's just dancing, and or they're reciting the lyrics, and it doesn't sound as harsh. It's just something about it. You can get away with saying some things that may rub people the wrong way if you just up and said it. But if you put it behind a distorted guitar, then it's a little different. Or if I'm yelling my head off, it's a little different. So it's music does that to people, and it's definitely with hardcore, with it being so emotional, metal being so kind of aggressive. It's kind of the perfect fit. So, people are already ready. That show is ready to throw down, and then I give them a reason to throw down. So it's fun, man. It's certainly fun. It hasn't come without pushback, but I'm blessed to be in a situation that I'm in and able to put this good message out there to people that, again, would otherwise they just would never hear it, or they would just sweep it under the rug.
Right. Yeah. And pushback. It's funny. One of my favorite parts about being libertarian is just arguing. So I welcome the pushback. I'll get down.
There's no shortage of arguing in the movement.
I will throw down. So I'm fine with the pushback.
You make a really interesting point, though. It's like, with the music, like it doesn't matter what you say. Sometimes it's like once it's put to a tune or put, in music, that it's not as harsh. Like you can still, you're not as aggressive towards it. Like, I don't know. It's just kind of weird because I really like the band Against Me, and they're ANCOMs. Like, and I am so far against ANCOM, but like listening to their music, it doesn't make me angry like it would if somebody just said it to me. It's just, it's really interesting how that works. I'm sure there's some science to it. I don't know it though.
It has to be. I don't know what the science is, but I'm sure I agree with you. I'm pretty sure there's a science to it, because there's some of my favorite bands. Well, not anymore. I mean, it's a little different because now I'm in the scene. So now they just anger me, when I hear people.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But it's a little different. It's a little different because
turn off this bullshit
from the outside looking in. Like it's different. Like I could tolerate a Rage Against the Machine when I maybe could not tolerate that. Again, now being in the scene and thinking more in depth about what they're saying and actually conversing with some of these guys, or at least associates of these guys, I'm like, wait a minute, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
it's, I don't know. It has to be a science behind it, though. I completely agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So staying on this topic a little bit that we kind of touched on, I was curious, like, so you've played a bunch of shows, like you just said you were, touring with Vanna on their Fair World Tour. I'm curious, like, any green room arguments you've had with bands, or like, has there ever been anyone that you've like shared a stage with or crossed paths with in the music industry that really just had to kind of to try and give you what for?
Nah, man, like not in person, and these guys know where I stand. It's not a secret. It is not a secret. Like they know where we stand. Like and they look for it now. I remember when obviously Straight from the Path, they dropped that little alt right song, Good Night Alt Right song,
God.
and alt right. All I said was, I obviously I thought it was corny. I thought the song in general. I'm a huge fan of Straight from the Path, and I thought it was completely corny. I thought it was just same old regurgitated.
Weren't they all dressed in like black and red too? That whole thing, it was all done
bad.
up.
It was all bad, and I was like, but alternative press is quoting me saying basically side, because people, they know where I'm at with it. They know, like, look, bro, like I'm not where y'all at politically. So, but I haven't had anybody in person, and to be fair, that's perfectly understandable, because these guys put this stuff in music, and they might put say a one-liner or something like that. But it's not all of them. But I don't think most of these guys are as versed. They just know bumper sticker slogans. That's why I think that what happened with the Straight from the Path guy, I think it's just bumper sticker stuff.
Hot topic culture.
It's not really. They don't. But if given, it's a little different, because again, with me obviously working with Being Libertarian, and I do all these political speakings and stuff like that, where this is what I do. You know what I mean? Like, this ain't nothing that I'm not saying no bunch of corny, shock value punch lines and stuff. Like, no, I live this. You know what I mean? So if any of these guys ever wanted to have a conversation, it would be welcome. I don't see it happening. If they start to disagree, they might disagree with me over the internet or something like that in person. But I just honestly, and to be that's fine, because my bandmates are the same way. They're not as versed in it, other than Alex, versed in it as I am. So you don't want to make a fool out of yourself. And let me go challenge this guy, because you got to. If you come to me, you got to be ready. You got to be ready for it, because if you come challenge me, I'm gonna challenge every platform that you that you claim to stand on. But I do. But again, that's understandable, because I do this. I do this. A lot of these guys, they just do music and that's it. You know what I mean? And even if they believe in what they believe in, and they might again, toes down, they might believe in it. But it's a little different when you libertarianism is something that's so specific, but it's also something, again, that I live and breathe, whether it be with being libertarian, whether it be with all the political events that I do, public speaking engagements and stuff that I do. Like, I'm versed in this. I'm not just some guy that just fell off the turnip truck and just wanted to talk about it. So I haven't. I welcome it. And but I haven't. I mean, it'd be cordial conversation. I absolutely will, because I know a lot of these guys disagree with what I have to say. They have their little mumblings. And hell, in the last tour, it was like that. One of the guys, merch guy, I won't say the band's name. Merch guy comes to me like, "Yeah, guys, they're talking, man, but I agree with you, man, on everything you say," and stuff like that. I'm like, "Oh yeah, appreciate that." But they would never come up to me, because again, if you want to be in the green room, we could talk about that. We can record it, but I don't think it's gonna work out well for you, because I think that those bumper sticker slogans, man, it's not gonna work.
Go so far.
Yeah, it might go. Put it in a song, in a tweet or something like that. But when it comes to actually engaging in a conversation with somebody that knows what the hell they're talking about, it might not work out well for you. But I haven't. But I think it's inevitable that it probably will happen at some point.
Oh, I'm sure. Especially so you're talking about you'll get into it a little bit on stage, right, when you got the mic, and that's not so rare. It's rare for capitalists, right? Because capitalist musicians are very rare, like we said. You've got Anti-Flag goes. I think they have more talking than they have music in their shows for the most part. When you're addressing the crowd, do you just kind of flow? Do you just kind of go with it, or do you kind of think about a way to, because that you're addressing people that might not have ever heard anything like this before, so you just kind of take the Sowell approach and kind of blow their mind apart? Or
it's because we have breaks in between, definitely songs, and then we have specific breaks that are dedicated for me to talk, and usually I don't plan any of this. I have no idea what I'm going to say until the music stops, and our little beat plays, and I just start talking. You know what I mean? I have no idea what I'm going to say, but I always try to keep it as simple as I can. And usually I started off by saying something that people can agree with. Usually it's like something like Trump, for example. And I usually, like the last tour, a lot of when I, spoke about something, I was like, I started off saying, yeah, pretty much everybody in this room, has a problem with Trump. And, we all, we don't like him, obviously, yada, yada. I just start with that. And as it gets everybody like, yeah, F Trump. But then I say something like, but if you thought the problem started and began, or ends and begins with, Trump, then you sleep. You have no idea, what's really going on. And then I break it down for him. So it's, you gotta, I'm a little more, I guess, less aggressive than I am maybe on a post or something like that, and it's mainly because I only have a set period of time. Like I've got maybe 45 seconds to try to get my
songs in the start.
Yeah, so before the next, I don't have a lot of time, so I have to keep it simple. I have to keep it simple. But yeah, I mean, a lot of what I say, I try to simplify, like what the next song might be about. I try to simplify, like Statism, obviously, is our most popular song, and I try to set the scene for it, and get people thinking before I start the song and stuff like that. So it's certainly, you have to have that sort of balance, because it's when you have that limited amount of time, 45 seconds or so, it's only so much that you can say. So you want to be smart about it. So I make sure that I'm smart about what I got to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so pivoting off the band a little bit, we'll go back to just kind of your political stuff in general. You touched on this a little bit, talking about how you like to focus on culture. I wanted to dig a little bit more into that, and just kind of overall how you prefer to go about your activism. What are some of the ways that you like to promote, personally, the messages of liberty, just kind of outside of just, because I'm sure there's one way you do it with your music, right? You can. Not everyone wants to write, an album full of November rains and have 17-minute songs.
Yeah.
So when you're doing like your activism thing outside of your music, let's get into that a little bit more. How you prefer to kind of attack issues in that way.
Right. I mean, I've been asked. I'm not political, so I've been asked, and it's not because I'm one of those, voting is violence, agorists. No, that's not where I'm at with it. I'm just with what it is that I'm trying to do and what it is that I'm trying to accomplish. I don't think that being involved in kind of the political realm is best. I guess one of my talents should be best utilized. Some people are. We saw what happened with Ron Paul, even Rand Paul with this recent election, and how he got a lot of people stoked on liberty. And so I guess there's a place for that. But with myself and what it is that I do in activism, it's all culture. It's all culture. And I think that's where the war is going to be fought and won, if we're going to win, that is, because politics are the lagging indicator of culture. You change you change the culture, the politics change by default. So if I can connect with the gaming community, if I can connect with people, rappers, metal, hardcore heads, people that are, rooted in, because everybody's a part of called Christianity. I'm a Christian. You know what I mean? If I can, everybody's a part of a soul culture. And people, that's a great question that you ask, get it asked all the time. But you know what I mean? I think that's where the battle is going to be. It's going to be, if we're going to win it, that's where it's going to be, fought. And everybody's a part of a subculture. It's not one individual that isn't, unless you just stay in your mom's basement and never leave. You know what I mean? And I mean, you don't have any kind of interaction with people online or anything like that. But every individual, for the most part, is a part of some subculture. And that's what I believe in as far as attacking and really getting this message out. I, utilize, whether it be my involvement maybe in a church, involvement in, locally, again, maybe being a rapper, growing up gangbanging and stuff like that region. And there's so many people that I used to bang with that are libertarians now, because I was able to reason with them and use that. I've been there, done that. You know what I mean? I understand that struggle. And using that to really further and get the message out. And I encourage a lot of people to do that. I'm not saying that there's not a place for politics. That's just not my battle. I mean, I don't belong there. I'm not one of these uber kind of intellectual, maybe some people like to think of me as, but I'm not this uber academic. Yeah, I went to college, did my thing, but I'm not this uber academic person that wants to, I'm not going to beat you with my credentials and stuff like that. That's not how it's going to work. You know what I mean? So I am one of those guys that, and again, that's the bulk of usually, I guess most definitely in America's case, that's, where I'm at is where generally the most, American people, that's where they're at. It's just run-of-the-mill, regular, average individual, and I think that's why I've been so successful in really being able to get my message out there. It's because I'm somebody that they can relate to. I'm not the same old libertarians. We got this and these are awesome academics. We have a bunch of academics from Mises Institute, even the guys that I might look at maybe a little more unfavorably at the other institutes and stuff like that. But there's a lot of guys got their doctorates and they wear their suit and ties and they get up there and they preach the message and stuff. That's awesome. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying there isn't a place for that.
There's certainly a place for it, right? But not everyone wants to hear the verbose rantings all the time,
Exactly.
I mean, there's a place for everyone. I don't know. I'm not one of those academics either. I've kind of found my place within the party and using my skills to help as many people as possible, and that just happens to be helping with campaigns and managing social media and stuff. I mean, everyone has got some kind of skill where they can help, and I think the culture is a huge part of it that is severely lacking in the libertarian movement. Like we don't have that huge cultural influence. Like the left has pretty much all of Hollywood at this point. That's the kind of things we need. We need libertarian mindset movies and just stuff like that to subconsciously start changing minds. And I think that's really cool that you've kind of found your place, and even if it isn't within the party, you're still fighting for what you believe in. And I understand you get a lot of flack for that, but I just don't think people quite understand maybe where you're coming from, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe, to be fair, some of that is I haven't done maybe the best in explaining that. You know what I mean? The best job at doing that. So I can understand where people get off, because, again, you get people that think I'm this uber, like, staunch non-voting, anarchist. And
yeah.
that's not even how I am. You know what I mean? I don't really care if you vote or not, whatever, it is what it is. But, my thing is that where I'm at, in life, maybe there might become a time in which that's the avenue that I travel. But right now, and I just don't think that's my calling. And my plex with has always been with I guess you can say that a lot of members of the LP, I do have a plex with them. And, a lot of that's with the leftist infiltration. A lot of that with them focusing on illibertarian stuff. You know what I mean? And that's my problem with it. You know what I mean? But there's a lot of guys in the our colleague over at Being Libertarian with Larry Sharp,
Larry's
and Nicholas Vieser does. Like I have great relationships with guys that are involved with the LP. So it's not like I have just a beef with them. I know it could come across like that, and I haven't done the best job in saying, all right, look, I don't have a plex with. It's just some of y'all fools that's in the LP piss me off, and I haven't done the best job explaining.
Well, people like to focus on just bullshit and stuff that really isn't that important, or spending all day talking about roads and shit, when it's like let's just focus on what we can change. Like let's be a bit more pragmatic than just screaming just obscenities at people. Like, I don't know. I don't know. It's pretty cool, Like, I wouldn't expect you to waste your time in the party if that's not where you want to use your skills. And like, it would just be a waste of time.
And it's funny, because you say that, and, with this Libertarian Mises Caucus, those guys have been reaching out to me. And I like what they're doing. Don't get it twisted. I love what they're doing. Over there, they reached out to me several times, and they're all like, get me involved, or they want to run me or something like that.
Oh, they want you to be a candidate?
I can understand it.
Right.
Yeah, I can understand that.
You couldn't pay
it's
me
just
enough.
not me, man. It's just not me. It's not me. If they can find some guy, and it's not to say that even if they get some guys that I might agree with, I won't support them. I might just we'll support them, but it's just me as far as what my personal calling is. That's not it. And don't get it twisted. I appreciate that a lot of people do consider me in that light. I legitimately appreciate that. But
I think we're just desperate for candidates at this point.
Right.
We're just asking everybody.
Yes, you run. Like, yeah. But again, like, it's just not my calling. I mean, there's some people that's their calling. Maybe when I'm 55, it will be. But right now, man, I'm a young cat. I'm only 27 years old, and I got so much other cultural stuff that I'm focusing on that my time shouldn't be with arguing with other people in suits.
Yeah, I feel it, man. I support the party a great deal myself, but for the same reason, I have a hard time getting really involved on a close level. When like, I love libertarianism, I love the liberty movement, I love pushing the message of liberty, but when it gets into the political part of it, and people like, oh, well, it's always been done this way, so we have to do it this way. You can get the fuck out with that. Like, I don't want anything to do with that. I don't know why it turns me off to a big time.
Well, we have that new generation coming in. The new generation's just, kind of changing everything. And I think the old guard of the party is fighting back a bit. But, a little bit more time, I think we'll start to make some change and be proactive as a party. But, wherever people can help out, I think they should do so, whether it be in the party or just in the movement,
No, there's a lot of liberty to spread. So any way that anyone wants to help is going to be better than nothing.
Absolutely.
So we touched on this a little bit, and we'll wrap up the interview portion here, Eric, and I'll use this to kind of segue into this next bit. We'll go into some things, but before we do, we started with who you had gotten started in and who kind of brought you into libertarianism, and I was just curious. So now that you're in it, right? Now that you've had time to take in all the literature, who are your favorite philosophers that you like to read and follow? That are putting stuff out or have put stuff out.
It always starts with Murray Rothbard.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it doesn't matter which era. It's a lot of good material that came from him. Not just him though. Hopper. Just some of the arguments that he's been making. Whether it be with argumentation ethics, obviously the democracy, the guy that failed. These are interesting standpoints, and using the historical examples and stuff like that. I really enjoy his work. There's a lot of guys over there, and the guys that I'm friends with, like Tom Woods and all these guys that put out some great material. But I don't think anything beats, as far as, even though he's not really he's more of a, I don't know, I guess they call him more of a conservatarian, Thomas Sowell. But I don't think, from an economic standpoint, I mean, I don't think nothing beats his, because it crosses over. It doesn't matter, Austrian, Chicago, it doesn't matter. You read basic economics, it applies, and it's such a great, and he purposely wrote it. No graphs or anything like that. None of that uber complicated jargon or anything like that. It's just straight talk. I don't think it gets any better than that. And I have another one reading. I'm finishing up right now of him. Trying to look for it. Economic Facts and Fallacies back there by Thomas Sowell.
That's the one I started on. That it blew my head apart.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? It's so much good material in there, and obviously with Walter Williams as well. He has the State Against Blacks. It's a lot of good material that he has, and it's just. But those two will still be my favorites. But if I people always ask me, all right, look, I want to get into libertarianism. Start me somewhere. I always start them off with Anatomy of State by Murray Rothbard, because I think once you get through the first page, you got to be an ANCAP after reading it. I mean, once he breaks it down, because he's telling you straight up, like, all right, we're being under the impression what the state is and what it. So let me talk about what the state is and what it actually is and what it is not. You know what I mean? And coming to the conclusion that it's a monopoly on use of force and violence. A territorial monopoly. And it's like, man, I mean, if you want to turn somebody into libertarian, it's a really easy read. I start there. But he has a lot of good material, man, that it's kind of some stuff for, even to this day, his stuff flies under the radar that Rothbard, I don't think people understand how much material he actually put out, essays and stuff like that. It's like, it's some gold. There was one, egalitarianism, he was saying, what was the name? I think it was, he was talking about radical egalitarianism. libertarianism, and it's basically in how it's a revolt against nature. That was the name of it. And it's such a good read because he talks about these concepts of disparity. Soul talks about that a lot as well, but in this specific nature, he's talking about this concept of equality and how it's saying that it is. Like, you think everybody just throws this word around, equality, all the time. And it's like, this is insane. This is an insane concept. And this is why it's insane, and he has a lot of stuff that flies under the radar that I'm even still finding to this day. So you can't really go wrong with Murray.
No, you can't. He has so much work out there that people aren't familiar with, man. Like Conceived in Liberty.
Yeah. I mean, that's another one. Like
huge.
it's not one of his most talked about one, but
That's
I
such
think
an
it just goes
important
to show how exactly how brilliant this guy is. Everybody talks about the useless ethics of liberty that people really talk about with Murray Rothbard, but he has a lot of stuff that's just under the radar. And big shout out to the Mises Institute because they have a lot of that stuff on their website. But it's a lot of stuff that they, even to this day, they're finding or still compiling to try to get out there. It just goes to show how brilliant this man really was, or how ahead of his time he really was. I mean, he was doing it. Murray Rothbard he was doing movie reviews and stuff too. Like, this guy was into everything,
Always
man.
busy.
And it's unfortunate, man, because you see like the political climate as it is now. I mean, I wish that he was around. I really wish he was around.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And so I'll take that and just a little bit of my own personal, my favorite guy to read is Hayek. I love him. I don't agree with him on everything, but I love the way he thought, the way his mind worked, right? Like nothing was off limits. He'd analyze everything. He'd tell you, I might change my mind if you present me with a good argument, but I'm going to think about this 360. And so I'm going to use one of his quotes to kind of jump into the topic we're talking about tonight, and that is, emergencies have always been the pretext which the safeguards of individual liberty have been eroded. I think that's a really important quote, and I think that we could do well as an entire globe full of human beings to remember that in these times. We've got so much going on right now, and it seems like every single time something goes wrong, the first thing people do is they look to the government to pull off some kind of social engineering to make sure that emergency doesn't happen again.
Right.
And so the first thing I want to get into is gun rights, right? We've got the Vegas shooting, which is horrible.
Man.
It's terrible. Watching that video, it's gnarly. What's even more gnarly about it, though, is that people think that this is somehow a gun rights issue. Mm-hmm. Like, you got this guy. He owned a fucking airplane. He's a multimillionaire. Do you think laws are going to keep this man from owning firearms? You got to be high.
Laws didn't keep him from shooting.
500
people.
Murder's already illegal, right?
Right, exactly right. And then just people go and so what are you going to do? And even on the other side of it, like if you were carrying, what are you going to do? Turn around 4 football fields away and open fire at Mandalay Bay? Yeah,
that was a sticky situation because of considering where he was at, what he had, and less people. And I'm all for it. If people want to carry around sniper rifles, I think they should be able to do it.
Right, sure.
But unless they had one of those, it would have been really, really hard to knock them off. But it's what the left more specifically, where they get this wrong is that they start from this utopian, like that's the starting point, right?
Right.
It's this utopian kind of idea, and this is how they win they don't win the argument. This is just how they start, and how I guess they control more so the argument because they want to claim the more high ground. So they start here, and how they start is that, all right, we don't want people to die. Right, that's where how do you argue against it? Right, we don't want people to die, therefore we have to feel like we're doing something, and they feel like, and this is what all this is. It's almost signaling in which they do when they advocate for further, gun rights. Even if somebody gets the gun illegally, and that's happened probably more often than not. Criminals is what a criminal does. They don't care about your damn laws.
No.
And if they want to kill somebody bad enough, they'll find a way to do it. So, or to attempt to do it. So it's one of those things where they have but they try to claim the more high ground. They have this ridiculous starting point, which is that, again, it's utopian. As much as we would like this to be a scenario, it's realistically, definitely in this day and age, is not going to happen, where there's no murder, nobody getting shot innocently or something like that. And so they start there, and therefore, if you argue against their, they propose gun rights, you argue against them where you want people to die. You know what I mean? And it's hard to argue against that, because again, they try to already claim the more high ground. But it's never it's the fact that every mass mass shooting or tragedy, more so, people, the leftists more in particular, they try to politicize it, and they try to claim this more high ground. But it's so whack to me, and it's really from a guy that grew around, obviously, people that I've had people die, people close to me get shot, and air that over nonsense, people getting crossfire and stuff like that, innocence, and it sucks. I understand, that nobody wants to be killed, or nobody wants to see their loved one died. Definitely if they're innocent and stuff like that, it sucks. But the fact that they try to claim this more high ground by operating from this completely unrealistic standpoint, and then they're able to pretty much block any legitimate argument. The facts can all be there. Okay, you had a law against this, it didn't work, so further gun control is not all you're really you're making it harder for people that I guess are quote unquote law abiding citizens to be able to obtain, people that are generally good people, let's call them that, obtain weapons to be able to protect themselves. You're just making it harder for them to be able to have these guns by wanting further gun control, because the criminals don't even give a crap about the laws that are enacted right now, that exist right now, that are supposedly being enforced right now. They don't care, and it doesn't work. You know what I mean? And
it's the drug war on guns.
Bingo. That didn't work. All these drugs are illegal. I mean, you can see how, I would imagine, I mean, if they made, all right a gun ban, which I don't think that'll have, it'll be a civil war before that ever happens in America. But assuming that happened, I mean, the black, I mean, it would be a dangerous black market, that is, but it would come about, absolutely, just like we saw see right now with the cartels and not just the cartels, I mean our own government and their criminal behavior behind
fucking Afghanistan.
Yeah, I mean, like, between that and Fast and the Furious, and it's like there's a lot of criminal activity that that they're doing. So it's not, and they're putting guns in the hands of criminals and stuff like that. So it's look, man, it's they're operating from a pipe dream, and I don't think that we shouldn't allow them to do that. I think that we need to knock that immediately when they try to pull those cards. We need to knock them down immediately, because I mean it's very sad, and it's pathetic how they're able to operate from this holier than thou kind of moral high ground that they don't legitimately have.
No, it's terrible, right? And so I just wrote an article for Think Liberty about Australia's NFA, right? Because like I don't, first of all, like, I don't give a shit if it's bump stocks, and bump stocks don't matter, right? There are liberties involved, so I'm interested, right? I'm not even that crazy into guns, but I notice when some bullshit's going on and someone's trying to pass something in a time of emergency, and people need to stand up to that. And what's crazy, so what you just said about, citizens having a disadvantage, it couldn't be more true. And the reason Australia's NFA is interesting to me is because we have proof right there of what happens when that goes. So Australia has the strictest gun laws in the Pacific, right? And they did this gun buyback program that instantly resulted into, just like you said, a violent firearm black market, right? That violent, it's an important part to remember, because we're not talking about just drugs anymore. This is a black market for things that are very violent tools. And not only that, but so you see these videos from Vox and all this shit, and now this or whatever, and they're talking about, okay, so you got suicide, gun death rates are down to almost nothing. You've got mass murder, firearm instances that are all but eradicated. You've got firearm related homicides that are on the downturn, and that's so disingenuous, and it makes me so mad. I peeled back the onion a little more, and I looked at the same subset of data. And I just looked at all of it instead of only leaving, cherry picking the parts because what happens is when anyone hears that isn't familiar with analytics and statistics. They hear when Vox says all firearms by suicide have declined by 50%, someone hears suicides are down 50%. When someone hears that firearm homicides are down by 20%, what the general public hears is homicides are down 20%. Couldn't be further from the truth. Right? Suicides are at the same exact rate that they were, but what ended up happening is now hangings and suffocations are at an all-time high. Right? Homicides had been going down since the late 70s. Right? It was a continuation of a trend that started well before the NFA. And the things that make me the most mad is exactly what you said, the data that everyone leaves out, which is probably the most important. Armed robberies spiked. So instances where average citizens were made criminals and firearms were used as the main primary method of coercion went way up. Mind you, no one was killed, so it didn't end up on a stat sheet. But this is the disadvantage that you're talking about. You take away the guns, you take away the defense. The criminals now have the statistical advantage. They have the more powerful weapon, and they know it.
Right. No, I mean, it's with these stats are constantly like skewed, and
it's ridiculous.
They apply them when they want to apply them. They'll ignore the legitimate. I mean, obviously what you read in Facts and Fallacies by Thomas Sowell, he kind of talks about a lot of that stuff and how they love to talk about disparity. I mean, the left does, they more specifically the left, they do that all the time with every issue, right? Every issue they kind of spin these stats, and again, it starts with them thinking that they have the moral high ground. They operate from as if they have no legitimate like solutions or anything like that. It's all right, well, I'm operating from the moral high ground. Therefore, everybody that disagrees with me is against said moral high ground, and excuse me. In the case of gun rights, they believe that all right, we don't want people to die. Okay, so if you oppose us and anything that we say, no matter how ridiculous it is, you must want people to die.
Right. So binary.
Yeah, it's insane. But again, this is why I think it starts with rejecting that. You got to I don't play with them, man. When they get to talking this BS, and try to claim the moral high ground, I'm like, no. You can't have that. You can't have that. You cannot have that. You don't get any sort of right to that, especially considering what it is that you advocate, which is essentially when you talk about gun rights, you're making it harder for good people to be able to defend themselves, and it's often contradictory to these. I mean, come on, let's be for real. Sunday, everybody's the left is Colin Kaepernick, police brutality, and then now we're talking about gun rights in the hands of the freaking guns. Let's call it what it is. It's not necessarily you only want government to be able to be the ones that have these types of weapons. Okay?
Right. That's what it equals out to. The government that everyone hates on Sundays.
Right. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like that. So no, don't allow them to have the moral high ground by any means.
Yeah.
I think they have good intentions. I mean, like you mentioned before, their philosophy runs about as deep as bumper sticker slogans. So I don't think they have, a lot of them have even thought this through, like taken it to its logical conclusion that the government you hate that's, killing people in the streets are going to be the only ones having those guns. And, you're giving the police and law enforcement so much more power when you don't have a way to defend yourself. So I don't think people on the left have taken it to its logical conclusion. And, when arguing with Democrats, I've kind of taken a step back. I don't go in full force with my libertarian views. I kind of just lay some bait and then ask them questions. And I found that the vast majority that I've spoken to or, interacted with online in the past week or so, they don't want all guns banned. Like they're just talking about, common sense gun reform, but really they don't, a lot of them don't even understand what that is. They're talking about assault rifles, which aren't really even a thing. They have no idea what they're talking about. Even in CNN, like you saw that ad, right? Or not the ad, but the article, the bump stock thing. They didn't even have a bump stock on the gun. Yeah. Like they really have no idea what they're talking about, and they're trying to pass laws on stuff they don't know. It's just, they do that for really everything they pass laws on, but Yeah, but I mean,
Right.
so I kind of step back and just like ask them questions. Like, so, what, since you don't want all guns banned, what do you want banned? Oh, well, we want bump stocks banned. Okay, so do you want to ban nail files as well? Because that's all it takes to make a bump stock. And they're like, oh, well, and then they, switch goalposts. So
Yeah.
it's, they,
Yeah.
yeah, and
As always.
it's really frustrating, dealing with people who haven't thought their philosophy through. They, eat up whatever Vox and BuzzFeed put out and, eat up whatever their, politician at the time that they love is saying, and it makes sense to them because they genuinely want what's good for people, and I think we don't give them enough credit for that. Like, the average leftist just wants people to not die, and they want people to be prosperous, and they want, you know what I mean? Like, they don't have ill intentions, but their policies have very bad outcomes, and they don't realize that.
That's
Yeah.
because it's
As always.
Yeah.
social engineering. You're not going to fix the problem is they're trying to fix a problem that can't be fixed, right? Like Eric said earlier, you're not
It's
going to.
utopian, bro. It's not. None of
Yeah,
this. It
yeah.
can't happen. Like it's not. It's
You
not
don't. You don't
legit.
fix evil.
Yeah, like it's not. It's one of those, like, and that's why. I agree. I don't think that necessarily they have the worst of intentions. I mean, it's the problem is that what they advocate in terms of law usually makes their problem worse. You know what I mean? And it does. It makes, and when I say it makes the problem worse, when we're talking about gun violence, violence is going to go up again because you're propping up such a dangerous black market here by not allowing people to I guess buy and purchase weapons, or the type of weapons that you or want them to have. But I mean, going to the point of the government and historically, those are the last people that you want to be the only people that have these, like, a certain type of weapon.
Right. It should be the last place you go, not the first.
Yeah, like but it's the first with them.
I mean, you want to trust law enforcement agencies that can't even check the address on a no-knock raid, like with guns? Like,
yeah, it's insane.
They can't
right?
even read a warrant correctly, like, and you want them to have all the firepower? Like, no, thank you, I'm good.
Right. No, it's that's exactly what it is. But these guys don't understand it. They don't. Again, they operate from this kind of utopian idea. I have more high ground, and that's where they start. And once you start there, it's like, again, and when you disagree with them, it's always, well, you don't care about the kids, you don't care about the poor, you want people to die, you want people
Somebody
to do this.
think about the children.
Yeah, exactly. Again, because they all automatically assume that they have the more high ground. But I think the best way, at least for me and mine, and how I speak with them, is getting them to understand not what it is that they want, because they start from the outcome, right? They always start from the of what the outcome that they want. They never talk about how to get there. And it's easy to talk about, all right, well, we want this to be a scenario where people are not getting shot, a scenario where everybody's fed, a scenario where nobody's homeless. Okay, how the hell do we get there to that situation? And that's what they don't talk about, and there's a reason for that, because it would force them to have to admit the violence that they actually advocate, which is what they're advocating when they're talking about laws and all of this other nonsense. What you're saying is that you want to put these people under a threat of a government gun, and let's call it what it is. So that's how I try to approach them with it. It's like, all right, well, you think I'm violent because I want people to be able to own a freaking tank if they want, you know what I mean? Well, let's talk about what it is that you advocate in these policies. You want, if I have a gun and I get put on some watch list, you think that the government has the right to kick down my door and confiscate that gun? You know what I mean? So talking to them like that, in that way, is the way I try to get through to them, because again, you can't allow them to have that more high ground, because they don't. They need to understand the violence that is inherent in the policies that they advocate. They have to understand that. Because they've been getting away for years, whether it be with through media, through academia, and assuming that just because they operate from this utopian kind of outcome, that they automatically have the moral high ground, and that couldn't be any further from the truth.
No, it's you're absolutely right. It's the frustrating part is it's all short run. Everything is short run with the government. Everything's short run. The way that people think that support the government is short run, and that's exactly what you're just talking about. Is it's like someone goes out and they say, okay, we're going to, eliminate bump stocks so Vegas doesn't happen anymore. And people are like, oh, hey, that's great. And just like you said, no one pays attention to the fact that anyone's going to be kicking down doors, or, if they say eliminate a certain kind of weapon, no one thinks about how you're going to go get that weapon. What's going to happen after that happens? It's all short run. They say, okay, you're going to eliminate that weapon. Perfect. Awesome. One step closer to utopia. That's all they wanted. But they miss the whole fact of everything else that comes with it, because no one's thinking anything through anymore. Have you guys heard of this U.S. Liberty Act?
No. Inform me, please.
Oh boy, I'm excited to share the bad news. So much like we had the Patriot Act in 2011, or not 2011, September 11th. After that came the Patriot Act. It wasn't very patriotic at all. So we've got the Liberty Act, and it's going to be right on the heels of this Vegas incident. And I'll just read a bit of an excerpt here. It's an extension of this Section 702, I guess, bill, and I'll break it down here. Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act is a statute that authorizes the collection, use, and dissemination of electronic communications content stored by U.S. Internet service providers such as Google, Facebook, Microsoft, etc., or traveling across the Internet's backbone, with the compelled assistance of the U.S. telecom providers such as AT&T, Verizon. So basically they're getting you everywhere. And just they can take it and use that as surveillance without warrant, international and domestic. And that is now legal. So it's in place, I believe, some form of it right now, and it's going to dissolve in December. And this Liberty Act is essentially a proposal to make it permanent.
Oh wow!
Jesus.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
It dissolves on December 31st, 2017, and the Liberty Act would make it a permanent thing. And I'll tell you the first thing, other than the obvious thing that pisses me off about this, the first thing is that it's gross, because that these things don't get written overnight, right? That this thing didn't get created from the minute that gun barrel wasn't hot anymore to today. That it's been sitting in a file cabinet waiting, and that it was waiting for something like Vegas, and that's absolutely disgusting.
It makes me wonder how many other bills they have hiding and just waiting for a perfect opportunity.
That's all they need, right?
Yeah.
I mean, a tragic situation, and it's how it always has, and how it always happens, right? It's a tragic situation, and freaking, whether it be Congress or the president, doesn't matter. Somebody comes trying to play hero, and I can fix this situation. Watch me pass this law and intrude on everybody's private property rights in the process. And that's when people are the most vulnerable. It happened with 9/11. I remember 9/11. It's kind of a weird situation, and it's easy for us to look at it in kind of retrospect of or in hindsight. It's kind of, I talk about this on my show before, and how I remember vividly just about everybody. It wasn't a whole lot of people that weren't like, all right, let's fucking nuke the Middle East. Like, everybody was ready to go to war. like they were pissed. Like, everybody was heated. Pissed. And it just goes to show how it's something that simple. It's a traumatic event. Obviously, it's a tragedy, and it sucks. You got people that innocents that die, but it don't take. It's something that simple, and because everybody's so emotionally distraught, and they're in their emotions. They're amped up. I can pass something. I'm going to invade on your private property rights, but hey, it's in the name of helping the people, right? It's always in the name of helping everybody. It's in the name of security. And Walter Williams talked about in his speech over at SMU the other day, and how people, basically giving away liberty for the sake of security. You know what I mean? It's crazy, but it's happened. It's not a new tactic by any means. That's the perfect time to get you. You know what I mean? When people are at their most emotional, and they're looking, and that's what I hate about state and I hate about government is because, and this is not to side with Trump or Obama or any president before him, is that people automatically, because they're so fixed on this idea that the president can do any and everything, anytime something happens, they look to them. Doesn't matter what it is. Some tragedy. Hey, look to the president. What does he have to say about it? Look to the Congress. What do they have to say about it? What are they doing about it? Like, what the hell are you doing about it, bro? Like, why are we looking to these guys?
Exactly. It's kind of messed up how we like look to our leaders like they're messiahs. It's like, okay, they're just people, right, first of all. And it goes both ways too. Like they look to them for, what are they going to say? Like, how are we going to get through this? And they also like blame whoever's in power for what a random individual did. Like, you go in the left groups on Facebook and they're like, well, this is Trump's fault. Like, this is exactly what he wants. Like, okay, you need to calm your tits because this is ridiculous. This is not Trump's fault. This was a mentally ill individual, who went up and shot up Vegas. Like it was a tragedy, but we can't be, just throwing blame around where it doesn't exist because then the problems don't get addressed. So.
Yeah, well, so it's kind of funny. I just connecting the dots, right? When you think about it and you think about, well, how do we kind of handle emergencies? And I had not thought about this before, but it's funny because you look at like what you're doing, Eric, and addressing culture is exactly how you handle emergencies, right? Because the problem isn't how do you turn a wrench to make sure no one murders anyone anymore. It's how you elevate education to people on, and as dumb as this might sound, like why it's bad to murder, right? No,
for sure. No, I mean it's not dumb. That's legitimate. It's like, you know what I mean? It's kind of the advancement of the human mind and the human, because I mean, hell, humans were a lot more murderous than what back in the day than what they are right now. And
it's just a part of life.
Exactly. So it's like, but humans have advanced definitely, depending on what culture, definitely like people call it West. It's not as aggressive. For people aren't as aggressive as maybe, people on the other side of the pond. But it's certainly one of those things where it is going to take culture, and that's what people need to understand. It's not going to take. There's no switch that Trump or Obama or Bush or Clinton or whoever, Carter, before, none of these. There's nothing that any of these guys could have done to flip a switch to say, all right, well, nobody's going to murder anybody anymore. It's not how it works. It's not how it works. It never has worked like that. But there is something that you can do to maybe you can talk with, because you never know. You might be able to talk to somebody that was emotionally distraught, was thinking about offing some people, and you talk him out of it, or you give him some sort of education to where he thinks to not, all right, well, maybe I shouldn't go and start airing people out. You know what I mean? Right. So it certainly is it's people shouldn't feel as helpless as they do, because they look at the president and he has all his power, and it's illegitimate, but he has all his power to be able to do all these things, but he's not God. None of those guys are God. They can't. I mean, you're talking about a territorial, a monopoly in which they rule over 300+ million people. Like, there's nothing that one individual can do that's going to apply to every single individual. No. It's not how it works. He's not God, but we put these guys on pedestals. It's not just America, to be fair. Almost generally every country does this, in which something happens and they're looking, all right, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? And it's like, those are the last people that you should be asking to do something, because they're generally going to screw the problem up even more. But realistically, there's nothing they can do in their position that you can't. You do, because you're going to affect the lives of people that are around you way more than a guy that I've never met Trump, for example. I've never met him. I probably will never meet him. I've never shook his hand of anything like that. I don't know who this man is aside from what the television is telling me. Mm-hmm. But I can't say the same about the person I live with in the same household, or my neighbor, or something like that. Those types of interactions are going to be a lot more impactful than anything that the friggin' president can do, because we don't know this man. I don't know this guy, and people need to start acting like that. You know what I mean? Like, you and I know each other better than what I know that you or I know, or the president. You know what I mean? But we, for whatever reason, people look to this guy as if he's the one that's going to be able to save everybody or he got to do this, he got to do that. And it's like, why are we putting these guys are individuals just like us, and they do not have superpowers?
No, far from it. They're even more jaded than most everybody else. So we're talking about responses. We're talking about what people can do to help. So you're very close to Harvey, right? Hurricane Harvey just hit.
Yep.
And I wanted to talk about this for a moment because I feel like, as you obviously, right, it whenever anything happens like that where a lot of people are affected in negative ways, it's going to be terrible. But I feel like the response to Harvey was pretty great, and not even considering the government response, right? You got these videos of people just lining up with their boats on freeway on-ramps just for miles.
And I knew a lot of these guys, man. Like, it's crazy. Like, a lot of people that I knew, and I'd opened up, you're talking about open up my house to all my family members. Like, hey, if you needed a place to stay, I got you.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? People can, like, in that response, I mean, you're talking about even privately millionaires that have donated so much money.
Right, like the NFL, like the Cowboys alone, right? Like Jerry Jones donated some insane amount, and then you got like J.J. Watt turned around, opened up a charity, and he it's crazy. And this is a private sector, and they gave way more money to the efforts than the government did.
Exactly, and it's like I use that as an example to really highlight, how. It's voluntary. I'm not trying to plug voluntarism in action here, but that's what it is.
Yeah, you can.
You know what I mean?
Matt does it all the time.
Yeah, but that's what it is. You know what I mean? That's exactly what it is, and I just don't understand why people always look. Definitely when you consider that, any dollar that the government has anyway is already yours. You know what I mean? It's confiscated dollar.
Well, it's yours after they take 50 cents from it, and so it's.
But yeah, right. And then on top of that, their efforts are going to be a lot more inefficient,
right?
Than the private sector, helping people out. You know what I mean? Because obviously, government they have no incentive to really be economic at all. You know what I mean? Because they have this kind of endless supply of money, whether it be with the Federal Reserve or with taxing people. You know what I mean? Or really a combination of both. So it's certainly. People should be looking, I don't want to say looking to their neighbor, but I mean, it certainly is an example when you look at Harvey and the response to people out here, and not just out here, people all over the country, people that just wanted to help, use their own resources to help. I just don't understand. And again, this is another talk that Walter Williams was talking about with the legitimacy, because people were asking him questions. Somebody asked about Harvey, and it was like, because Walter's more of a constitutionalist than anything, and he was saying like, there's nothing just about government taking from people, and an idea that they should be, trying to relieve the disasters or people from national disasters or anything like that. It's like that's not legit. You know what I mean? Like, you could do that with your own dollar. You know what I mean? And you saw people do that. Yeah. So it's crazy. Like, I don't understand. And it happens every tragic event. It happens like that. It always happens like that. Well, people start by the boatloads helping their neighbor, and I'm sending people like, oh, without the government, who's gonna? I'm like, bro, like, nobody's holding guns to these people's head, and they're getting on using their boats, coming from North Texas going to South Texas. Again, these are people that I knew out here in North Texas, going out there on their boats and stuff like that were helping these people out, like taking off of work just to do that. You know what I mean? So it's like, you have it working.
The answer is right there. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like, what are you asking me? What's going to happen without the government? What are you doing right now?
Yeah, so, take a look outside. Look at
exactly. These examples are out there before our eyes right now. I think people just need to start paying. Maybe we need to do a better job of pointing them out, but certainly people need to do a better job of paying attention.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like you said, it starts with the neighborhood, right? If everyone's just going to sit around and feel sorry for themselves, the government ain't going to help, the neighbors ain't going to help, no one's going to help. You're a victim. No one going to help you if you're always a victim, because it's never going to be good enough, right? But when people start picking themselves up, and that's just, it's contagious, right? And I truly think that's what happened in Texas. It was a bunch of people that weren't going to be beaten, and everyone just answered the rally call. Like, everyone decided, like, we're not going to be victims because of this, and that's where you get just miles of boats lined up. And it was, in my opinion, it was like, I don't want to say it was great because it's a horrible thing when a bunch of people lose their homes and everything, but it was the response was great. The fact that people got up and they made something of it, the fact that you see these NFL teams generating billions and billions of dollars in relief. I was really stoked to see that. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, no, it was something awesome for me to see as well. Again, me being out here, and I'm really connected to the city of Houston. You know, that's where Backwordz shoots all our music videos. Got a lot of family out there too, so you know, it certainly was something that it was cool to see a lot of people come together and you know, just get out there and help people without, again, being under the threat of a government gun. And that just gives us libertarians more examples to show people that we don't need these guys.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so we're running a bit long. I'll give you guys all your evenings back. Is there anything at all you wanted to plug or anything you wanted to cover before we wrap it up here, Eric?
No, I'm good to go. I mean, again, I appreciate you guys having me, and you know, hopefully be on again. Obviously, you know where to find me. I'm on Twitter, on Facebook, Being Libertarian, we're everywhere. And just keep it locked, and you know, really look forward to putting out more and more material, man, and really getting this message of liberty out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, hopefully we can have you again. We'd love to. Caitlin, anything at all you want to plug or anything you want to say before we cut it out?
Just thank you, Eric, for coming on our podcast. It was a joy, and we hope to have you back again.
Thank you.
As always, check out Open Source Liberty on Facebook. It's bringing candidates and volunteers together to help win elections. If you have any skills you want to lend to candidates, join the group, and we'll get you connected with somebody who could use your help.
All right. Well, on behalf of Eric and Caitlin, this is Think Liberty Podcast, and whether you like it or not, we'll probably be back again.